Good morning. Today is our last day of studying the life of Solomon. We're going to read 1 Kings 11:26 through 43. So pause me and read 1 Kings 11:26 through 43, and I'll be here when you get back. Okay, spoiler alert, Solomon dies. If you didn't know that, I'm not sure where you've been. But this reading starts with the word also. So from yesterday, we talked about God raising up enemies. And so Jeroboam appears to be, in God's eyes, an adversary, if you will. Jeroboam was an Ephraimite and considered part of the tribe of Joseph. And Solomon sees Jeroboam working hard, and he apparently was a leader of men because it says he was a man of some standing. So he probably wasn't actually out there breaking his fingernails, lifting stones. He probably was leading some men doing that. And Solomon looked for industrious men as leaders. This is an example of that. And I liked what one of the commentators said in contrast. Not necessarily good or bad. Industrious men are great. But Saul looked for valiant men as leaders, and David looked for godly men as leaders. I don't know that I totally think that's an all-encompassing thing because of Joab, David's military leader, was not really all that godly. But Solomon sees Jeroboam, and he puts him in charge of the house of Joseph, which is the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. And at this time, it was probably only Ephraim that they're talking about. Manasseh had kind of stayed to themselves, but it could have been both of them. And so he is on his way out of Jerusalem, probably to work, and he probably has some men with him. And Ahijah, the prophet, is a prophet of Shiloh, pulls him aside, away from his men, so that no one really heard. Now, Shiloh is kind of not a great place anymore. The tabernacle had been there 369 years. Yes, 369, older than the United States of America, following Joshua. But since it had been moved to Gideon, and since the time of David, really, it wasn't much. There wasn't much there because they had moved everything to Jerusalem. But Ahijah was a prophet out of Shiloh, and he had on a new cloak, and when he got Jeroboam aside, he took off the cloak and he tore it into 12 pieces. Now, I'm not really sure what these cloaks were made of, but to take a new cloak and to tear it into 12 pieces must have taken some strength. Even if this was linen, it probably didn't tear that easily. So this might have been a sign of God's power. And he tore it into 12 pieces, and he told Jeroboam, take 10 of them. I'm going to give David one. Guess what? That makes 11. There's a lot of speculation as to why this is. Maybe the tribe of Simeon has assimilated into just Judah at this point. It could be the Levite tribe was mentioned as a possible non-tribe. There's all kinds of various explanations, but we really don't know. And why am I going to give you these 10 pieces? Because the Solomon in his reign has worshipped Ashtoreth, Shemos, and Molech. And he has not walked in my ways. He has not done what's right in God's eyes. And he has not kept the statutes of God. So those people that followed Solomon, they're being punished here. But Ahijah goes on to say that Solomon will be the ruler all the days of his life. So even though they're going to be punished, they're going to be punished through their descendants. Solomon, this ruler all the days of his life, is code for don't kill him. Let him live his natural life. So in verse 34 also, no, I'm sorry, in verse 36, there's one little quote there that's kind of important. And this is God speaking, and he says, Jerusalem, he wants David to have a lamp in Jerusalem, the city where I chose you to put my name. So this indicates that God has chosen Jerusalem. In my mind, this is the first real place where he said, yep, Jerusalem's where I want to be. Jerusalem is the place for my name. So he does. On to verse 37. Abijah, speaking God's words, says to Jeroboam, if you will get what you want, if, big capital letters, if, same thing to Solomon, you do what I command, you walk in my ways, you do what's right in God's eyes by keeping my statutes and my commands. So these are conditional promises. Yeah, I'll bless you. But guess what? You got to do these things. And he says he'll humble David's descendants, but not forever. In verse 40, Solomon finds out about Jeroboam and he tries to kill him. So Jeroboam flees to Egypt. And oddly enough, Egypt's king, who is Pharaoh and who is named Shishak, one of the few pharaohs ever really named, is Solomon's brother-in-law. So the question comes up, why did this Pharaoh not side with Solomon? And there's thoughts that maybe he was a little angry that Solomon took so many wives when his main wife was his sister. Or maybe he's mad at his sister for converting to Judaism. There's, again, speculation. Anyway, Jeroboam stayed there till Solomon died. And then, yes, Solomon dies. He was on the throne for 40 years. He was about 60 years old. And he was buried in Jerusalem. Nobody really knows where. So that's the end of our story of Solomon. There are writings of Solomon, Psalms 127, Psalm 72, the book of Ecclesiastes, the Song of Solomon. Some people say that those were written at the end of Solomon's life, the Ecclesiastes, and that he did come to know that following the Lord was the best way. Again, speculation. Solomon lived a hedonistic lifestyle, and his descendants paid for it. The next part of the story is great. I hope I get to it soon.